Even on my 100th reread of Harry Potter, I find new details that totally change how I see certain aspects of the story. So in today's video, I thought I'd share with you 5 details that I think a lot of people might miss. I think from all of the details we have around how the Potters died, it's almost certain that Wormtail was at the cottage, or at least very, very, very close by. And as Voldemort's spy, the only reason he'd be that close would be because he was involved in the murder somehow. And actively involved, more than just telling Voldemort where he could find them. So look, we all know Peter Pettigrew, Wormtail, betrayed the Potters by revealing their location to Voldemort. But have you ever wondered exactly how that night played out? There is enough evidence in these books to suggest that Wormtail was actually present at Godric's Hollow the night the Potters died. He didn't just tell Voldemort where to find them and then stay away like the coward he is. Think about it, after Voldemort's body was destroyed, somebody had to retrieve his wand. And we know Wormtail had it because he used it to resurrect Voldemort in the Goblet of Fire. But after that curse rebounds and Voldemort was torn from his body, the Potter's cottage is destroyed. And according to Hagrid at the beginning of the Philosopher's Stone, he and Sirius Black were the first 2 people on the scene after that happened. So how could Wormtail possibly have got it? Now the text never explicitly explains this, but when you think about the timeline, Wormtail had to have been at least very nearby to collect the wand before Hagrid or Sirius or the Ministry officials showed up. Now, there is another option, that Sirius finds the wand when he arrives, realizes what happened, and takes it when he confronts Wormtail. But we all know Sirius was a more gifted wizard than Wormtail was. The only reason Wormtail can escape is because he catches Sirius off guard with his exploding curse killing all those muggles. In a straight-up duel, there is no way Wormtail would win, let alone be able to wrestle Voldemort's wand from Sirius and still escape. So the only other explanation for Wormtail getting the wand is that he was actually there. And after the curse backfired, he was able to go into the wreckage and retrieve Voldemort's wand. And this goes deeper than Wormtail just having to be there to get the wand. There is a second part of the story of the Potter's death which hints at him being there too. James didn't have his wand. And just think about that for a second. The Potters are in hiding. They know they are being hunted by the most dangerous dark wizard maybe of all time. And yet when Voldemort kills James, he doesn't have his wand. Surely if you're in that situation, you would have it on you at all times. In the Deathly Hallows, we see the scene from Voldemort's perspective. He watches James entertaining Harry through the window before Lily comes in, says a few words to him, and he hands Harry to Lily, throws his wand on the sofa, and that's when Voldemort sees his opening. Now what could Lily have possibly said to James to make him leave the room in a way where he feels comfortable enough to throw down his wand first? His only means of protection when they are in hiding and being hunted. She must have said something to make him feel very comfortable, very at ease. And I think what she said was that a dear trusted friend has arrived at their cottage. Perhaps the friend they trusted so much they made him the secret keeper. I think it's very likely Wormtail comes to the house as a visitor. He's greeted by Lily, she goes to fetch James, and he throws down his wand to give Wormtail a hug to say hello. Because we know the Potters had visitors from Lily's letter to Sirius that Harry finds in Grimmauld Place. She even mentions that Wormy was over recently, so we know Wormtail was one of the people who visited them. I think there's a really good chance Wormtail arrived moments before Voldemort in order to lower the Potters' guard, to make sure there was nobody else there protecting them. Maybe they had to lower some security measures to let Wormtail into their home, and that part of the plan was him going in first to let down their guard and make sure they were home for his master. So for me, the way that night plays out, Lily opens the door to Peter, a visitor they were expecting. She goes to tell her husband that Wormtail has arrived, so James throws down his wand to go and greet his friend. And as soon as he does so, Voldemort bursts in. And in that moment, James sees Wormtail isn't shocked, and James knows he's been betrayed by one of the people he trusts most in the world. And without his wand, he knows he's going to die, and that his wife and child are next. And so I think Wormtail, like the little coward he is, scurries back out of the front door as James is killed, while Voldemort goes and chases Lily and Harry up the stairs. And Wormtail very much intended to flee to save his own skin before the Order arrived in response, but then things don't go to plan and he hears a big explosion. The curse has backfired. He turns around, he sees the cottage crumbling, and that's when he's able to go in and retrieve Voldemort's wand before anybody else arrives. So I first heard a version of this from my friend Kirby on TikTok. There's a link in the description to her video if you want to hear her original take on it. And every time I read it now, it feels like the only thing that makes sense for things to have played out the way they did. Remember in The Philosopher's Stone when Harry gets his first chocolate frog card on the Hogwarts Express? He unwraps it, catches the frog, and inside there's a card with Dumbledore's face on it. This is the only one I have. This is Ollivander, not Dumbledore. He reads the back, it's got all of Dumbledore's accomplishments on it, all the stuff he does with Nicholas Flamel, the way he defeated Grindelwald. And as he turns around, something strange happens. Dumbledore disappears from the card. He just vanishes. And at the time, we accept this as just magic photos move. Ron even comments, well, you can't expect him to hang around all day. But where exactly did Dumbledore go? Well, what if Chocolate Frog Card Dumbledore went to tell the real Dumbledore that Harry Potter had safely boarded the Hogwarts Express and was on his way to the castle? It sounds far-fetched, right? But stay with me. Throughout the series, Dumbledore seems to know everything that is happening, often before anybody tells him. And we usually attribute this to his intelligence, or him having spies like Snape everywhere, or maybe his own abilities in legilimency. But what if it's because his chocolate frog cards are an extensive network of spies for him? Okay, it still sounds ridiculous, but please stay with me because there is actually evidence in these books that suggests this might be true. Think about it for a second. Chocolate frog cards are everywhere in the wizarding world. Every child collects them. They are in homes, they are in schools, they are in shops, and they are in pockets all across Britain. If those Dumbledores from those cards could relay important information to the real Dumbledore, he would essentially have eyes and ears everywhere through the wizarding community. And that would explain how Dumbledore learned that Draco Malfoy was tasked with killing him in The Half-Blood Prince. Because Dumbledore knew, and in The Prince's Tale and the Deathly Hallows, we see that Dumbledore actually knew about it before Snape even confirmed it to him. Now sure, Dumbledore's smart, he could have pieced it together, but apart from Snape, he doesn't have any spies among the Death Eaters. And from the Spinner's Lane chapter, we know that not even Bellatrix or Narcissa knew that Snape knew that was going to happen. Clearly that plan was really kept under wraps. I think the only way Dumbledore could have known, prior to Snape telling him, was if Draco maybe talked to his father about it while his chocolate frog cards were nearby. And this also explains why Dumbledore often seemed to show up at exactly the right moment through the series. He doesn't need to be physically present to know when he's needed. His network of chocolate frog cards will tell him. Still sounds like a reach, right? There is a moment in the Order of the Phoenix that I think makes this very, very plausible. In the Order of the Phoenix, Dumbledore is removed from his position as headmaster, but he knows that Hogwarts is being protected by people like Snape and people like McGonagall, so he goes without too much of a fight. Prior from that, he's removed from the Wizengamot, the wizarding parliament people, and Bill mentions that Dumbledore has said he doesn't care what they do to him so long as they don't take him off of the chocolate frog cards. And it's easy to put that down to just Dumbledore being whimsical, but I think actually that might be a big priority for him, because those cards are crucial to how Dumbledore gathers information, because he has thousands of little Dumbledores traveling around between cards, relaying back to him what they see and what they hear. And we see portraits act like this, right? We see Phineas Nigellus do it. I forget their names. We see a couple do it from the Order of the Phoenix after Arthur is attacked. The one that goes to and from St. Mungo's, the one that goes to and from the Ministry. But that's portraits, and chocolate frog cards are not like portraits. Most of them aren't, anyway. Gilderoy Lockhart's chocolate frog card is certainly not a masterful spy network for him. But Dumbledore is the most brilliant wizard alive. So I think whenever they brought him in to photograph him for his card, Dumbledore could have done some crazy magic to make his chocolate frog cards kind of act like portraits. And I always wondered why Dumbledore didn't make a portrait for Harry to take on his Horcrux hunt with him so they could talk and discuss the plan. And I wonder if deep down Dumbledore hoped that Harry maybe would take a chocolate frog card with him. This one might be the biggest reach of the video. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. One of the most interesting artifacts in the Harry Potter series has to be the Deluminator. So we're first introduced to it as the put-outer in the Philosopher's Stone. You can see Dumbledore holding it there. And he uses it to extinguish the streetlights on Privet Drive. And there's a whole separate conversation that needs to be had about why a wizard as powerful as Dumbledore needs a device to extinguish lights. But there are plenty of theories out there that suggest this device goes much deeper than just putting out lights, and even has links to Dumbledore trying to bring his family back from the dead. But the Deluminator gets left to Ron in the final book. And we know it does some interesting things to bring Ron back to the group after he leaves. But the specific details about what it does and how it does it are never explicitly mentioned. But I'm pretty confident that Dumbledore essentially created a taboo of Ron's name, similar to what Voldemort does to his own name in the final book in order to catch members of the Order of the Phoenix. If you recall, Voldemort knows that only the Order are brave enough to say Voldemort's actual name, so he taboos his name so that anyone who says it, their location is revealed, and Death Eaters and Snatchers can immediately apparate to their location and capture them and torture them and kill them or whatever they need to do. It's a great piece of magic, and it ticks all the boxes for being exactly what happens when Ron uses the Deluminator to return to Harry and Hermione. Now, after Ron leaves, Harry and Hermione don't say his name at all until the moment right before he returns. And that could be a coincidence, right? Maybe Ron just really wants to go back, and that's when he feels it the most, that he should return to them, and so that's when the connection is formed, and so he hears what they're saying, and it just so happens to be when they say his name. But I don't think that's true, because Ron says he regretted leaving pretty much right away. And so if that's how it worked, the Deluminator would have almost instantly started working. The only thing that changed between then and when Ron returned was them actually saying his name for the first time. And in the book, the author makes a big deal out of it. There's a moment where Harry and Ron are discussing Muriel, Ron's great aunt, and the text specifically says he hesitated. He did not want to say Ron's name. And so he calls Muriel Ginny's great aunt instead. And I don't think that little detail is a coincidence. I think that is deliberately put in so that when we get to the moment after Godric's Hollow, when Hermione says, "Remember Ron when he broke his wand crashing the car?" So that we piece it together, that that's the first time they have used Ron's name after he left. And that's when he hears it. And that's when the Deluminator is able to return him to them. I don't think it's a coincidence either that that's when Ron tells them all about the taboo magic. That's when they learn what's going on with Voldemort's name. The fact that Ron leaves, they make a big deal out of not saying his name until the moment they say his name, and that's when he can return, and then he immediately tells them about the taboo magic that Voldemort is using. For me, there's no way that wasn't deliberate. I think Dumbledore tabooed Ron's name, linked it to the Deluminator before he left it to him, and that's how this works. Because we know the good guys are often inspired by Voldemort's own magic, right? Just look at Hermione's DA Galleons, the way she communicates about the time and place of their meetings with the rest of Dumbledore's army. She says that magic was inspired by the Dark Mark. So I think Dumbledore created a version of the taboo spell, linked it to Ron's name, and to the Deluminator. Have you ever wondered why Ron Weasley is such an exceptional chess player? I mean, from very early on we know that he's good, but good enough to beat McGonagall's giant chess set in the first year, a set designed by a Transfiguration Master to keep dark wizards away from the Philosopher's Stone. He beats that when he's 11. That is not just good at chess, that is being a prodigy, I swear. But what if Ron's chess skills aren't just about strategy and practice? What if they're connected to something deeper, something magical? I'm gonna go on a tangent for a second, but it will come back. For a long time, Harry Potter fans have speculated that maybe Ron Weasley has a little bit of the sight, that something deep within him is able to see or predict elements of the future. Which sounds ridiculous, right? Ron always makes fun of Trelawney and of divination class. But there is a surprising amount of evidence to suggest that he has underlying abilities in this field. Like an uncanny number of offhand predictions he makes through the series actually come true. In the Chamber of Secrets, he casually suggests that maybe Tom Riddle was the one who killed Moaning Myrtle, which of course is exactly what happened. In The Prisoner of Azkaban, he predicts that Harry will come into unexpected gold. And not too long afterwards, Harry wins the Triwizard Tournament, which comes with, I think, 1,000 galleon prize fund. We see Ron and Harry making up their divination dream homework. And Ron mentions all these details that basically predict the entire outcome of the Triwizard Tournament. And one of the wildest examples is when Ron is doing his History of Magic homework, and he just makes up names for the goblins from the Goblin Rebellion. He invents a goblin named Urg the Unclean. And if you have a look at the Chocolate Frog cards, turns out there was a goblin from the Goblin Rebellion called Urg the Unclean. How would Ron randomly guess the correct name unless some part of him had access to information that he consciously didn't know? There's a lot of evidence that Ron has these latent seer abilities. So what does it have to do with chess? Everything. Chess is fundamentally about predicting your opponent's moves and planning several steps ahead. So I think Ron's divination abilities give him insight into what's going to happen on the board before it happens. What if he can subconsciously see the future moves, the patterns, the possibilities? Especially in the giant chess that was enchanted by McGonagall, Ron isn't playing another player. All of the pieces move independently. They have their own personalities almost. So Ron isn't just out-strategizing his opponent. His ability to anticipate the movements of all of these pieces without even realizing he's doing it, to him it just feels like intuition or good strategy. I think it's deeper than just being good at chess. When that scene is playing out in the Philosopher's Stone, he doesn't talk through analyzing the board in a way that Hermione might. He just seems to know what to do, where to go, what's going to come next. And when he sacrifices himself, he sees it coming moves in advance. He tells Harry and Hermione that's exactly what's going to happen before it does. I think an 11-year-old in that situation, if they were playing on strategy alone, all of that pressure might make them second guess, you know, maybe I've missed something, this could happen. But Ron is certain. And I think it's because deep down, Ron Weasley has this magical ability to see the patterns of the future unfolding before his eyes. Severus Snape was almost certainly supposed to be a vampire at one point during the writing of these books. That's not me saying by the end of it, there is confirmation he is a vampire, but when the series starts, I think the plan with his character was for him to eventually be revealed as one. And there are so many clues in the text that point to this being part of the author's original plans for him. First, let's look at how Snape is physically described through the series. He is repeatedly categorized as being bat-like, with his black robes billowing behind him like wings as he moves. His skin is described as being sallow, his eyes are described as being dark tunnels, and he lurks in the dungeons away from sunlight. These aren't just coincidental descriptors, they are classic vampire imagery. And the evidence goes beyond physical appearance. Look at the spells that Snape invented during his time at Hogwarts. They are so connected to being a vampire. Sectum Sempra, a spell that causes your victim to bleed profusely. Is that not vampire coded? Literally making blood pour out of people. And Lever Corpus, which suspends people upside down in midair. That might sound random until you realize that bats, the animals most associated with vampires, sleep hanging upside down. And because of that association, plenty of vampires are depicted as hanging upside down. There's also a really interesting exchange in The Prisoner of Azkaban that's easy to overlook, but I think strongly suggests this might be the case. Obviously, we all remember Snape assigns an essay on werewolves, clearly trying to expose Lupin's secret. But Remus Lupin, for all of the maturing he's done since he was a teenager, was still a marauder. And I don't think he would necessarily just take that lying down. The next essay, we hear Lupin set to his Defense Against the Dark Arts class after finding out they had the werewolf essay from Snape. It's an essay on vampires. I think there's a good chance Snape knew Lupin was a werewolf, and so he sets that essay, and Lupin knew Snape was supposed to be a vampire, and so he set that essay as a retaliation. There's even a moment later where Lupin is playing Snape for a fool just after the Marauders map has insulted Snape when he tried to discover its secrets. Lupin comes along, he's clearly lying to Snape about what it is and where Harry got it from, and then kind of passive-aggressively, his last comment to Snape is, "Harry, Ron, come with me, I need a word about my vampire essay. Excuse us, Severus." If Snape has tried to out Lupin as a werewolf, and Lupin knows that Snape is a vampire, does that not just read as the subtlest, most passive-aggressive power play? And I don't think it's unlikely that if Snape was a vampire, Lupin would know. Because who was Snape's closest friend and confidant growing up? Lily Evans, who married James and essentially became one of the Marauders. And I think with this information, you can fill in some gaps about Snape's parents too. In the Order of the Phoenix, we see one of Snape's memories of his father being cruel to his mother. And we later see Snape telling Lily that his father doesn't like much of anything. With Snape being the half-blood prince and his mother going to Hogwarts, we often assume that his father was just a muggle. But what if he wasn't? What if his father was a vampire? And in the same way that werewolves and centaurs are seen as lesser by wizards, so too might vampires be, which might explain why Snape's father hates everything to do with magic. In the end, our story concluded without this element explicitly being laid out, but the remnants of this character trait remain scattered through the books. And if you liked hearing me talk about these details and what they might mean, what the subtext was, then you might like this video where I respond to a theory from the Super Carlin brothers who suggest that Ron and Luna might well have been soulmates, which sounds more absurd than anything I said in this video.